on Saturday nights. I think we had 2 or 3 tables, and we took turns going to each other's houses and playing bridge.
We enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, did that for years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being banished to the family room and hearing lots of laughter from in here.
But I think our kids enjoyed it too, because we had all kinds of snacks for the people here for bridge, and the kids got into all the snacks.
Well, we were given popcorn and Coca-Cola and stuff to our delight, as long as we stayed out of the room where the grown-ups were.
I think that one of you told me that then the next morning you like to come down and clean out all the dishes where anything was left of the snacks. You know, like if I didn't clean everything, which I probably didn't. But that was fun.
Yep. Yeah, mostly fun that we were having it, but there was one thing I remember when what year was it? Evel Knievel was jumping all the automobiles with his motorcycle and all that. And he jumped the pond at Caesar's Palace. And,
Right.
And so our son Tommy decided he'd set up a ramp and he was going to jump something out there. And he kept jumping and jumping until finally he missed and broke his arm, wasn't it? Yep, broke his arm.
All scabbed up and cut up the face.
And this was just before school started, because you had to start school with it if you were a mess. But when we took you over to the emergency room and told them what had happened, one doctor looked at the nurse and he said, "Oh boy, this is probably just the first for several kids copying
This
copy,
yeah, because of Evel Knievel.
But I remember Joe Baines next door, his mother came tearing out of the house. Because see, to build the ramp, you all needed all kinds of stuff. And he'd gone out with a couple of her dining room chairs and a leaf from her good dining room table that you all were going to use for your ramps. So, always something.
Fun times. And Vienna was a great town to grow up in. That you were very involved with your children in the Vienna Youth Group, VYI.
Yeah, VYI and Vienna Little League.
Right.
With the baseball and the basketball. And I enjoyed that very much.
You did some coaching too, I believe.
Yeah, I was coaching most of the time, also on the board of directors and things like that, which I didn't find all that much fun. The coaching I really enjoyed. But I did that for, I guess, from the time Steve was 9, from the time Steve was 9 until until long after you were through with all that, and Gary was through it.
Yep. So, one of the other things that I remember as one of your children growing up is we used to go on picnics and such, and one of the places you liked to take us was Civil War battlefields. Before it was illegal to dig up treasures, and right behind you on the wall is a musket up here, and that's an actual Civil War rifle. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story of finding that, as well as just in treasure hunting in general?
Okay, yeah, well, treasure hunting in general. What you're mostly finding would be mini balls and things like that. Maybe the hub from a caisson wagon wheel, just all kinds of small things. So when I first got to reading, I thought, it was about the same as a mini ball, maybe 5 inches down or something. That's about how far down you usually found them, 4 or 5 inches is all. Where dirt had built up over the century, that had gone by. Anyway, so I started digging, and I kept digging, and you dig for a little while, and if you don't find anything, then you have to take your metal finder and check all the dirt that you've dug out of there to see if you've already dug it up. So I just over and over again had to keep checking it, because I kept digging and digging until I had a hole, and it was very careful. It's archaeological work, digging carefully with a little spade, and kept going until I had a hole. The more than the length of that, and about 18 inches deep, about 1.5 feet down. But it was a beautiful find. It's a basically it's a British infield, which both armies used that. But later the Union Army was getting a lot more of the repeating rifles and better rifles and better ammunition, whereas the Confederate Army was having a lot of trouble. So they were, and the main way they got new equipment was to drive the Yankees out of an area and then take their stuff.
He told me when he dug it up, and it was the long metal thing, but the dirt was discolored in the shape of the wooden
The rifle
Yeah, the butt.
rifle butt, and you could actually see where it had been.
Where it was, but it was no longer there.
No,
Yes,
it
it
was.
was just a more reddish looking,
Right.
the wood had turned into just dirt.
Nutrients probably from the.
Mhm.
All right, and then of course your children all grew up, and some got married, and some had children, and some of their children have children now. And tell me a little bit about how that was for you when they started moving away and starting their own families, and Christmases would be different.
Well, who was the first?
Well, Tommy was probably the first one to leave, really. And he was the first one to have children. Because Matt was born in '82, August of '82. And he was the first of our grandchildren.
Steve and Bob were both gone before I left.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because Steve,
Yeah, they were gone, but they're just wandering around.
well, Steve lived in Texas
Yeah.
for quite a while, went down there and lived for almost a couple of years with his Uncle Rudy. And then Bob, he got an apartment with a friend, and he was working at the post office and riding his bike back and forth and Gary, after Steve came back, they started a business installing telephones, and Gary worked with Steve for a while. And Gary was telling one time it was raining and he had to go over there on his bike, and it was a couple of miles, and he had to go on the right down Route 50, I guess it was, a busy road. And he got to Steve's house, and Steve was out on the front porch with a cup of coffee, and Gary was thinking, oh, how nice, he's worried about me riding out in the rain and slippery roads and this. And as he pulled up at the porch, Steve says, we start at 7 o'clock, and it was about 5 after. That's the sympathy he got from his older brother. But,
And so Bob didn't work at the post office very long, though, just about a year or so. And then he got a job with AT&T, and that was in, I think, 1978, and he's still there.
Back
Been with
then, I think it
AT&T ever
was C&P
since.
Bell or something that he was first with that
C&P.
got swallowed up by AT&T.
Oh, yeah, C&P telephone, I guess.
So,
But it was always a sort of almost anyway, a part of AT&T,
right.
a distant part is all. But anyway, technically speaking, and for his retirement and everything, he's been with AT&T since 1978.
That's a long time. He's a bigwig now.
And here it is in 2015.
But-
He's been, I keep telling him, all you have to do is keep going. 41 years is how long his grandfather, Lyle Douthat, worked at Marshall College and as a professor. And so I tell Bob, you gotta get to 42 and then you'll beat his record.
He's getting close.
Bob tells me he has no intention of trying to beat a record like that.
But Matthew was our first grandchild, and
Lacey was next.
well, Steve and Susan got married. Matt was born in what, 82?
82. They were
And they were,
married in
They
earlier
got married
83.
early '83.
She was
and
born
she
at
was
the end of
almost
December.
the end of '83.
Yeah,
And then Jamie in the spring of '84.
right, just, it was like popcorn, I used to say. And we had ornaments for the Christmas tree for each child with their name and the birth date on it. And we just had one each year, and didn't skip a year. And then finally, two of them were in the same, Jackie and Hope were both born in the same year. That's the first time that there were two in a year, but otherwise it was one each year, just. And then Lauren was the next year, but just a few months after, so the three of them were like the three musketeers, and little triplets running around, crawling around, then running around. Christmas was always so exciting, and everybody got their presents and ripped everything open, and then we were knee deep in wrapping paper and ribbons, and the kids' babies crawling around through it, and it was just a lot of fun. But when it was just you five, the way we started Christmas morning, nobody could come down until we were all up. Y'all had to come wake us up, and then you sat on the steps in order.
In order
Steve
of
is
age.
the oldest, then Bob, Tommy, Gary, Jenny at the bottom. It's a wonder she didn't get trampled. But by that, so that we could come down, turn on the lights and set up anything that needed to be
Cameras
plugged
and
in, and
things,
get the cameras ready, and get the coffee plugged in, and so on. 'Cause we sometimes hadn't had more than a couple hours sleep. And then we'd say you could come down, and boy, it was a mash. And you each had your place where you left your stocking the night before. We don't have a mantle, so you couldn't hang stockings, but you would put them. Somebody
In a
had that
particular-
chair, somebody had that chair, somebody had a spot.
I remember
over
this
here.
room seemed so huge back then.
Can you imagine now with five of them with all that stuff, and it would seem very small probably. But you all had a lot of fun and a lot of excitement Christmas morning.
So you ended up with 11 grandchildren, and so far, 5 at least great-grandchildren.
Actually, we've got 13 grandchildren.
Yes, you do.
No, you got two.
Gary and
step,
Tony.
Two
two
yeah,
step
grandchildren.
step grandchildren.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they would.
Yep.
It's,
So they're Matthew, Lacey, Jamie,
Thomas,
Thomas,
Tom.
Hope, Jackie, and Lauren,
Rachel.
then Rachel, then Betsy, Jonathan, and Allie,
Mm-hmm.
and then
And then-
Michael.
Except Jonathan was before Betsy.
Right, that's correct.
So then Tony,
Scott and Michael.
Gary married Tony, who had two boys, Scott and Michael.
Right.
So now
So 13
that makes 13.
grandchildren and at least 6 great-grandchildren
Right, we've
so
got-
far, and counting.
Let's see. Jamie, we have Trudy and Tommy and Abigail.
The
They're
seventh
both-
one is
Travis.
the seventh
and
one is on
Alexis.
its way.
Okay, Travis, Alexis, and then little Mikey, and that's 6.
And T. Rudy,
And Lauren is pregnant,
and Lauren's pregnant with what will be the
which
seventh.
would be the 7th. So obviously you've seen quite a lot of changes in society in America and life from the 1930s when you were born through growing up in the 40s, married in the 50s, raising children in the 60s and 70s, and now we're here 2015 and you've got all of these descendants. If you were to be able to leave them with any words of wisdom or guidance or teaching or anything that you might want to say, what do you think you would say to them in the world they have to live in now?
Well, some things have always stayed the same. So I think, now in the future, certainly in the past, good advice was always buy low and sell high.
Yep.
He asked his dad that question one time, what difference did he see? Because he'd lived through so many changes from the horse and buggy days to, and you know what he said? The fact that so many people eat out.
Yeah.
And he saw that as one of the biggest differences in the way people lived. And that was probably 20 years ago that you asked him that?
Oh yeah, that was probably back about 1970 something. 80s, 90s, more than 30 years ago.
Well, I imagine when you all were young, there wasn't really all that many places to eat out.
Right.
And
That's right. There were only a few.
and now, if you think about it, from fast food places like McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's to nice places like Applebee's and Fridays and Ruby Tuesdays and Outback to fine dining,
Yes.
there is probably, I can't imagine how many restaurants and what kind of $1 billion a year industry it must be. And
Must be huge. And men used to take their lunch to work. You know,
Brown paper bag.
brown paper bag or the, you know, the lunchbox thing. And now I don't think anybody would do that because they've got these, you know, fast food places
Yep.
where it's fairly inexpensive and everybody just does that rather than packing a lunch to. I can remember with 5 of you going to school, and then he took his lunch a lot of times, and on the kitchen table before you came down for breakfast, I laid out a whole loaf of bread, so many slices of bread, everybody bologna, everybody a cheese, everybody a top bread, and then started packing them in these bags, and it was, you know,
It's just the way life was back then.
Right.
There's no such thing now. Yeah, mainly, you know, because a lot of times, you know, people would eat lunch like a, you know, a simple thing or something, breakfast quick at home or something, but especially evening meals, you know, is where I think you see so few evening meals, which was one really nice thing, was family dinners together.
Yeah.
And they would discuss things at the dinner table each evening, and now they just don't have time for that. He works, she works, the nanny takes care of the kids. They don't have, you know, much communication among all the members of the family.
And all the
One
time
of
you
the
all
things-
were growing up, everybody came home for dinner, and we sat around
Yeah.
the table and had dinner together.
One of the things I'm seeing nowadays is even people that eat at home eat in front of the TV. Or
Yes.
even the kids take their food individually into their room and eat in front of the TV while the adults eat in front of the TV out in the living room.
Yep.
And that family
Not as much
unit
communication.
time of bonding and discussion and comparing notes is just gone.
There was a little discipline meted out during the dinner hour too, quite
Yeah.
often.
Wait till your father gets home.
Yeah, yeah. Or even when your father is home, you get some immediate discipline.
I've had a fork in the elbow a few times at the dinner table.
Well, there was one time, I don't know what you'd done, but something, and David was really coming down on you, and Gary was between the two of you, and he could see it coming. So Gary, just like this, it was like you all planned it. He ducked, and David swung and swatted you. But,
You would think Tommy would be able to see it as soon as Gary, but he was so busy with what he was doing, which was causing trouble.
Some things don't change, as you said.
Yes. But talking about people eating at home, you know, they were used to and don't anymore. A couple of things that reminds me of it. One is we were at a party one time, some guy that she worked for, and he worked, you know, where she was working at the time. His wife was a stock broker, I think it was. And so I was talking to her about stock stuff, and I was telling her she ought to, I would ask her something about if she'd seen something on the nightly business report, which comes on at 5:36 each evening. And she said, "Oh no, I've never seen that." You know? And I said, "You ought to watch it." And she said, "Well, I can't." She said, you know, I don't even get home until, you know, they would eat dinner after work at some restaurant somewhere. They'd get home about 7:30 or 8, and then I said, "Well, it comes on again at 10. Well, that's too late. They're already in bed by then, so they get up and get to work on time." And I thought, boy, yeah, it's tough. You know, It's not like it used to be, where you had some time in the evening,
Right.
together and all that.
Life is a